Craving fresh, made-from-scratch Mexican food that actually tastes homemade? Cafe Rio's got you covered. Every tortilla is hand-rolled, every sauce is slow-simmered, and every bite is bursting with bold flavor. Hungry yet? Don't wait. Order now at CafeRio.com. Build your burrito, salad, or tacos exactly how you like them, and we'll have it ready hot, fresh, and fast. Whether it's lunch on the go, dinner with friends, or a full-on fiesta at home, Cafe Rio always brings the flavor and the fun. So what are you waiting for? We've got you covered. Savor the flavor and order now at CafeRio.com.
You're listening to the Utah Checkdown Podcast. And now your host, Josh Furlong.
Welcome back to another edition of the Utah Checkdown Podcast. I am Josh Furlong, happy to be back with you today. It is a little bit of a somber feeling today, though, considering the events that took place yesterday at Utah Valley. Regardless of your political affiliations, I would hope we could all agree that this kind of situation is uncalled for and not something that we should ever have to experience. So my hearts go out to the Kirk family and all those that were at the event who had to go through that process to be able to see that and the grieving and the trauma that they're going to experience. That's tough, and I hope as a society we can move past that. Not in the sense we forget about these things, but that we move past these things where we allow disagreements or opposing thoughts to have an impact in our lives to the point where we take somebody's life. That's uncalled for. I used to be a political writer. I have a degree in political science, and I just don't have any interest in it anymore. Quite honestly, it's a taxing process, and so I understand some frustrations that people have, but not to that level, right? Like we can't be doing that. So, like I said, hearts go out, prayers go out to the family of all those that experience this, it's just a tragic situation, and unfortunately that's a common reality, not like to this extent, but a common reality in our world, and I hope that we can move past that. So there's no easy transition from that to talking about sports, which is entertainment, but I hope that these entertainment stuff can kind of be an opportunity to kind of forget the bad that is in this world at times. In the end of the day, whether Utah is winning or whatever team that you support is winning is really meaningless in the scheme of things. But at the end of the day, it's an opportunity for us to kind of get that out in a world that is increasingly challenging, and it's a tough situation. So like I said, there's no real easy transition to this, so we're just going to jump right into this. On today's episode, I want to go over a little bit of the AP Top 25 voting process that I go through. Before yesterday's event, this was kind of what was occupying the social worlds. And I have some thoughts on this, and I want to be able to break that down. And then we're going to do a little preview about Wyoming, this week's opponent for Utah, with a special guest. So we'll get into that. But before we do that, let me tell you about our partners. Craving fresh, made-from-scratch Mexican food that actually tastes homemade? Cafe Rio's got you covered. Every tortilla is hand-rolled, every sauce is slow-simmered, and every bite is bursting with bold flavor. Hungry yet? Don't wait. Order now at CafeRio.com. Build your burrito, salad, or tacos exactly how you like them, and we'll have it ready, hot, fresh, and fast. We've got you covered. Savor the flavor and order now at CafeRio.com. All right, we're gonna jump into this. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. I know this is not why you listen, but I have a unique experience and perspective of this AP Top 25 voting process, because there are 63 voters in the country who have been given the designation to vote for the Associated Press Top 25 poll. And every state has at least one. Utah only has one, and I am the only person that does that. So I have a unique perspective here. I've been doing this for 5-6 years now. I can't even remember how long it's been. And so, I've learned many things from it. I've also learned that this is an inexact process, but at the same time, it's kind of what we've got, and it does matter at the end of the day. And why I bring this up is because earlier this week, there was a balloter, a voter she's a beat writer from USC, that covers USC, I should say, and she voted Florida. She moved Florida up 2 spots after they lost to South Florida over the weekend. And she went on a podcast trying to describe why she did what she did. And as part of it, she didn't really do a good job of conveying what she was doing, or maybe she did a great job of conveying how she does it. But she essentially said that because her vote is one of 62, it all kind of evens out in the end, and it's just kind of silly fun and all that. And like, we get it. At the end of the day, the AP Top 25 is not something that is, earth-shattering or anything like that, but it matters, right? Like, these are rankings that people tout as universities. These are things that people pride themselves on. And look, it's meaningless, yes, in the end. This doesn't have any substantive value on how good an actual team is, but it's something there to be able to help rank teams, kind of help see the landscape of what's going on. And is it perfect? Absolutely not. As a voter, I understand how imperfect it is and how frustrating it can be sometimes to see the process and kind of how us voters kind of go through it. So I'm bugged by kind of the situation there. There's a lot of thoughts that I can go into with that. I'm not going to go into all that, but just know that I 100% care. Does that mean that I don't make mistakes? No. There's many people that will call out my ballot on a weekly basis, and I appreciate that. Honestly, I appreciate people calling it out and giving their perspectives, because I think it's important to be able to have those perspectives. At the end of the day, this is an opportunity for people to look at it, to have some accountability, and go through this process together, right? There's situations where you wake up the next morning, and this happens almost every single week, where there's something where I look at my ballot and I say, why did I do that? Right? Like, it happens. And I think it's because I care. And so I want to take you a little bit through the process of how I operate. So I was asked to be a voter a few years ago. Like I said, it was 5-6 years ago. I can't even remember at this point. And what essentially happens is I don't get paid to do the AP voting, right? So anything that I do related to this is on my own free will. It adds a ton more time to my schedule because I have to watch a lot more games. But I do it in large part because it gives me an opportunity to see a bunch more games from a critical viewpoint, right? I love to watch college football. It's one of my favorite things to do. And now I get to view it in a lens that lets me critique them. Is it perfect? No, right? Like, nobody's perfect. And some of these people that can come back on Monday, Tuesday, and critique our ballots, they have a whole weekend to kind of let it simmer and kind of see how things digested and everything. Us voters have to do it in a quick manner. That's not an excuse. It's just kind of how the process is, and you can call it broken, you can call it whatever it is, but it is what it is. So what happens is I have an entire spreadsheet, and if this was a visual podcast, which sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't, but if this was a visual podcast, I would show you what it looks like. But essentially, I've got it broken down on who the top 25 teams are, so who the last ballot is, and I've got a whole bunch of metrics in there to kind of show me what these teams are for them and their opponent, how they're rated. I utilize SP+, I use Macy ratings, I use FPI, I use, what's another one that I use? I use ELO. I use a whole bunch of statistical measures to kind of look at teams. At the end of the day, though, those are just reference points, right? They're not something where I say, okay, the top 25 teams in SP+ is who I'm going to rank. It's just a statistical number to be able to help me get to where I need to be, right? If not, I would just let the computer models do that. Every single night every single Saturday night after the games have all been played, so whether Utah has an early game, a late game, or whatever, I'm up till early in the morning trying to figure these things out, right? I've watched a lot of the games. Some weeks it's a little better than others, but I'm always on my phone trying to watch as many games as possible. Even during a Utah game, I'll have an eye on some of these games. Obviously, I can't be intently viewing as much as I can when Utah's not playing, but that's kind of where I'm at, right? Where I'm looking at all these. after all these games have been played, I sit there and go to my spreadsheet and I look at all these different things. I look at record, who they've beat, that kind of stuff. I've created my own little resume kind of thing. It's not perfect, and I don't publish it because it's not perfect yet, and there's other measures that I want to add to it to help me kind of get there. But it's, once again, another statistical thing that I can look at to give me an idea. That's my point, to say mostly that I care, right? That I'm not just doing this haphazardly and saying, hey, I'm going to rank this team just because I feel it. Now, there is still some of that, right? Like, numbers don't always tell the full truth, and numbers don't always get you to where you need to go. And that's why I have to kind of rank them where I do. And I make mistakes. You can be critical of mine this week where I had SMU in the ballot. That was honestly an oversight. I didn't mean to keep SMU in the ballot. I meant to put Auburn there, and unfortunately left SMU in there. I have to live with that. That's what it is. And I can correct that on the next ballot, but unfortunately, you get called out all the time for those types of things, and I don't have a great answer other than I made a mistake. It's a clerical error. I try not to. I take a ton of pride in that and not having those types of things, but it doesn't always happen, and I make some mistakes. So that's what happens. So as part of that, look, I'm going through all those different things. I'm putting those ballots together. I'm going in and out, trying to shape it up together to be able to make sure that I get the best ballot that I possibly can, to make sure that I look at it. I understand some of the frustrations that people have. I understand why many people think that ranking shouldn't be at this point in the season, but the way that I view it is, these are snapshots in time, right? It's an opportunity to be able to look at how a team is kind of viewed from a public lens at that time. If we were to go back in history, yes, nobody's looking back and saying, okay, who was ranked, number 10 in week 3 of the 2018 season. Unless it's doing some research to say, hey, this team was ranked, 15th at that point and ended up winning the national championship, that kind of stuff. There's not a lot of substantive value to that, right? But it's still a snapshot in time, and it's a historical view of kind of how teams were viewed. It's not perfect, as I've said. And it's one of those things that people are always going to complain with, whether your team is 10th or 12th or 15th. At the end of the day, that doesn't matter, right? We all get that. You all want to be at the top at the very end of the season, but that's kind of where it is, and it's just a snapshot in time. And so that's why we do these things. I understand why people are frustrated with it, but that's why we do these things. Now, how this comes about, once I rank my teams, so 1 through 25, they're assigned different point values, right? So the team that I vote as the number 1 team in the country that week will receive 25 points from me. Number 2 will receive 24, number 3, 23, and it'll just continue on down until the 25th team that I've ranked gets 1 point. So even if I put a team at, number 1, let's say I put Utah at number 1, the best that they can get out of me is 25 points. Now, me doing that, I have to have a pretty solid reason to be able to back that kind of stuff up, right? The AP isn't necessarily dictating where we put these teams or saying we have to do a certain thing. But at the same time, if homerism or votes outside of normal kind of voting take place, they will remove me as an AP voter. I don't know how often that happens. I can't say that it does. I know there are voters that change over in the middle of a season, whether they decide not to do it anymore or maybe there was issues that way. By and large, I believe, a majority of these AP voters are doing their very best to be able to rank these teams. Some are going to have better weeks than others. Some have different criteria for doing it. I try to look at the resume / kind of projections, although I've removed much more projections as it goes, but that's kind of where it is. So when you see these votes all tabulated, the number 1 team may not have been voted. Well, number 1 is hard, but let's say number 10, a majority of people may not have voted that team number 10, but they've received the 10th most points for that week. So, you get, I think it's Reddit does a little compilation of where all of us voters put it out there, our vote is, and they put it out there, and you can see that. I think these things are important, right? I don't think I should be doing this in secret. I don't like things in secret. I want to make sure that things are public so that you understand where it is. And if there is criticism that needs to come my way, I absolutely deserve it. I won't shy away from it. And I respect that, and I appreciate the feedback that comes from that. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight. At the end of the day, all I'm trying to say is that I absolutely care about this, and I want to make sure that you guys understand that I do. You can believe me or not, but I even learned to code a little bit over the summer so that I could get some API feeds into my spreadsheet so that I don't have to manually update these things every single day. And so I'm doing everything I can to be able to learn how to make these things better. Trying to make sure that I'm putting my best foot forward out there. So that's a little bit of that, but I want to get you to the heart of what we're doing, and that's previewing Wyoming. So before I bring on my special guests, let me tell you about another sponsor of ours, Canyon View Credit Union. At Canyon View Credit Union, it's on the house. Close a mortgage and get a free appraisal up to $600. To learn more details or apply, visit canyonviewcu.com. All right, we're joined today with a special guest. His name is Cody Tucker. He's the founder and publisher of 7220sports.com in Wyoming. He's the guy that follows Wyoming sports a ton, and we're excited to have him here. So, Cody, welcome to the show, and happy to have you here.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on, man. This is a fun rivalry I grew up in, and excited to delve into it a little bit.
So, obviously, you have a vested interest in Wyoming. The website itself says that. What got you into this, and kind of how long have you been following Wyoming sports?
So I used to just be your run-of-the-mill psycho Wyoming fan, and then I decided to go to college and grow up and get into this journalism thing. So it's much different. You're seeing it through a much different lens. It's not rah-rah anymore. It's straight up, legit coverage, not fan stuff, and it's surprisingly it was easier to find that line than I thought it might be. I covered Michigan State for a couple of years. I covered the Pittsburgh Penguins. Been all over the country doing sports, covering sports for the last 16 years. So, it got to a point. I like to tell people I was in the press box at Spartan Stadium covering a top 25 matchup between Michigan State and Penn State, and I'm watching Wyoming and Wofford on my cell phone, and I'm like, man, my heart is in Laramie, and I didn't miss a game here as a fan growing up for 27 years. Grew up in Cheyenne, 45 miles over the hill, and never missed a game my entire life growing up. So, and a lot of games in Rice Eccles Stadium and Cougar Lavelle Edwards Stadium as well, and over in Logan. Went to a lot of road games as well. So, grew up a huge Wyoming Cowboys fan, and just knew my heart was here and knew this was something I wanted to do. So I started 7220 Sports and came home, and this is my 7th year of coverage. Started independently, and Town Square Media bought me out and during COVID. God bless them, because as you know, it was rough sledding during that time. So that's kind of where it got started. And now I'm vast ridiculous amount of brain that I have stored Wyoming lore in, and I can spew that stuff now and talk from memory and talk from history and know a lot about the history of this program that I grew up loving so much.
These two programs obviously are familiar with each other, but it's been, at least 15 years since they've played each other. Kyle Whittingham was actually still coaching back then, so he's got a much better perspective of what it's like to go up to Laramie, what it's like to be able to play Wyoming. But just, briefly, kind of what are your memories of the Utah-Wyoming, quote unquote rivalry? I know Wyoming hates BYU much more. At least that's perspective that I've gathered. But what has been that rivalry been like for you dating back to then?
Yeah, I think there's more respect in the Utah one. BYU, yeah, you're absolutely right. In Colorado State as well. You're absolutely correct. Utah, there's definitely more of a respect factor to it. And I think, when you see the meme of the two gangbangers, one holding the blue bandana and the other holding the red bandana, that's kind of how Utah and Wyoming fans are when it comes to BYU. So we always kind of had that in common as well. But I remember back to Kevin Dyson and Steve Smith and Fuamatu Manafala and those cats. And, back in those days, Wyoming and Utah were kind of neck and neck. They were always kind of a perennial 7-8 win team and always kind of battling it out, unfortunately, behind BYU a lot of times. So that's what I really remember from it. And then, of course, you go down the line a little more and you're talking, the onside kick, the infamous onside kick, up 43-0 in the third quarter, and Joe Glenn flipping the bird, of course. And then, the year before that, Wyoming came out against Brett Ratliff and the Utes and came out in their beautiful throwback uniforms and absolutely hammered Utah. They hadn't given up a sack all year. They gave up 6 that day. There was a pick 6, a couple of strip sacks. And then, of course, we'll never forget when Alex Smith and Urban Meyer and Dan Mullen came into Laramie and the lights went out during an ABC primetime game. I believe Utah was ranked 4th in the country. And I will die on this hill all day long that Wyoming was at least going to give them hell to the 4th quarter. I might be absolutely nuts here, buddy. But when the lights went out, the crowd kind of died too. And it was amped that night. And, the lights go out. And then Alex Smith and company put Wyoming's lights out. So, and I think back to the unfortunately and crazy in 1999 was the last time Wyoming won in Rice-Eccles Stadium. And you could have knocked me over with a feather if you told me that's the last time Wyoming would win in Salt Lake City. And Patrick Chuckwer and Jared Jernigan met Darnell Arsenault in the back of the end zone and hammered him into the field goal post. And he went out on a backboard and spent the rest of the game in the emergency room with a massive concussion, Utah called it. So Cowboys rolled that night. A lot of good, hard-fought games. That's what I remember. Not a lot of nasty stuff per se. Obviously, the onside kick was a huge eye-opener. I actually got escorted out of the stadium that day by Salt Lake's finest. And you know what? I'd seen enough anyway. I'd seen enough.
You were giving up your own birds at that time, right?
Yeah. But, Utah, I think we all look at Utah as how we used to be pretty equal in a lot of regards. And then the Olympics happened, Urban Meyer happened, and that program just took off. And they've been really fortunate to have so much continuity, to have a head coach there for 21 years, especially a head coach that played at BYU of all places. But to have him there for 21 years and just he has solidified that program. And the fact that they missed a bowl game last year for only the 2nd time in Whittingham's tenure, that team's extra motivated, extra pissed off, as well Wyoming is as well. But you can only imagine Utah completely reloaded, and they're never going to let that happen again. And so far, they look like a team on a mission.
What has been the difference now with Craig Bohl gone? Obviously, Wyoming was a solid team there, defensively minded. What has that transition been like? And do you think Wyoming is there? Or where are they in that process to be able to kind of be where they can compete at a high level?
A lot of differences. Craig was old school, and he'd be the first one to tell you that. And, he did not jump on the transfer portal wagon as it was beginning to take off. And, that hurts. And the bill came due at a lot of places last year. Mainly the one that really glares to me is at the left tackle spot. This is a development program. Craig hung his hat on that, and he developed. No question about it. He put a lot of guys in the NFL. A lot of guys there's 8 guys in the NFL still to this day that played under Craig Bohl. So he's a 3-time national champion. You can never take that away from him, but he was old school in his thinking and did not do the transfer portal thing. And these days you can't rebuild through high school. You just can't do it, or you're going to get left in the dust. And Jay Sawvell is much more open to the portal. He's all in fact, on the portal. And he in the portal than Craig did. It's, I remember one year in 2021, the Cowboys lost like 12 starters to the portal right after the Idaho Potato Bowl. And I asked Craig, are you, what are you going to do about this? Do you even ask these guys if they want to stay? And he's like, hell no. He's like, you don't want to be a Cowboy and you don't want to ride for the brand and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, you can't do that anymore. You can't do it. And, the bill came due in a lot of spots last year. And, Jay is way more open to – they have a wide open offense now. Craig was ground and pound, 100% ground and pound. And even with Josh Allen, Josh Allen threw the ball a lot for a Craig Bohl offense, but ground and pound. And now Jay opens it up. Jay did some things that maybe ruffled some feathers right off the bat, but I think a 3-9 schedule or a 3-9 record really is behind all that. He put jerseys on or names on the back of jerseys. That's something Craig Bohl absolutely would never do. A third alternate uniform, that's something Craig Bohl just didn't play that stuff. So he said, we have 2 colors, 2 uniforms, and we go play, put our hand in the dirt. So Jay's very much younger, and he's a younger voice, in my opinion, that was needed. He gets mocked for this for some odd reason, but he works out with the guys. He has very close relationships with these guys. He's a player's coach. And Craig, by all accounts, was more of a CEO. and more of a, hey, I let my assistants do their job. I'm the guy who's pulling the strings here, and Jay's more the man. I loved your mom's spaghetti. I need that recipe, and you got to love that, right? And I think at a place like Wyoming, it's more imperative now than ever to be a player's coach and to try and retain. And Jay made a list, he said, of 10 guys he absolutely could not afford to lose this offseason to the transfer portal. He said he's kept 9 of them, including John Michael Gillenborg, who, if he has a healthy year, he's going to hear his name called very early in the spring draft. Chris Durr is an incredible talent at wide receiver. They kept their 3 best offensive linemen. They kept their quarterback. In fact, 84% of this offense is back, which is 4th most in the country, according to ESPN. So a lot of guys stayed because, A, they didn't want to leave on a 3-9 note, and B, War Memorial Stadium and the fans and all the atmosphere that goes around game day is really unmatched in the Mountain West Conference. And 3, they weren't leaving their head coach, who they really love and they enjoy, and I think that's it speaks volumes.
A lot of people are going to look at this defense, who was pretty solid last year despite even the record. Is that the strength of this team, or what would you say is the strength of this team?
I think we're still watching that play out, and I think with the portal and all the movement, maybe we're not going to know teams' identities till after non-conference play. Now, I really feel that way because some teams are not looking great so far, but you know, Boise State got blasted out of the barn in their first game. They looked like Boise State in the last game. Yeah, I mean, USF's a hell of a lot better than Eastern Washington, but I think we're going to kind of see, some feeling out stuff with so many new guys, and that's what's been incredible about Wyoming's defense so far. They have 9 new starters on that side of the ball. Nearly every backup is a transfer or even a freshman. They had a really good freshman class as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's easy to pinpoint that. They're 3 penalties away from pitching back-to-back shutouts to start the year. And then if you go back to last year, they held Ashton Genty in check pretty good, aside from one long run. Limited Boise State all night long, gave them fits, and then went into Pullman, Washington, and held John Mateer and Washington State to 14 points and pulled off the upset up there in Pullman. So their last 4 games, the defense has been really good, but it's all new personnel. I think I picked the Cowboys 7th or 8th in the Mountain West preseason poll, and it was simply because I've never seen this defense. I don't know what they look like, and so far so good. Obviously, the one thing they haven't really faced per se is adversity, and I think they all know that's coming on Saturday, and I'm really interested to see what they do and how they respond. But so far, the communication I hear from the players is night and day compared to what it was last year. Jay went out in the portal and found a bunch of cats that, you look at the school they came from and you go, how good can this guy be? Wyoming's best defensive player right now is Braden Johnson, their weak side linebacker. He spent the last 3 years at Oklahoma Baptist. Now the question is, how the hell did you spend 3 years at Oklahoma Baptist? I mean, he's been that good. So the goal this offseason was to go out and get a bunch of guys with chips on their shoulder. And Jay Sawvell, to his credit, kind of egoless in a way. He was like, hey, I leaned on Kenny Dillingham, of all people. That guy's, 12 years old? I leaned on Kenny Dillingham and said, what is your secret to success? How did you completely revamp a roster and end up in the college football playoff? And en route to that college football playoff, beat Wyoming 48-7 and just an absolute laugher in the opener last year in Tempe. And he said, you need to get guys that want to be Wyoming Cowboys. It doesn't matter what school they came from. Be here, they live it, they sleep it, they eat it. And that's so far what he's found. And he's been really happy with what he has in the locker room and just the overall vibe of this team. He had some goofballs last year that he got rid of immediately in the offseason. And now he's got a bunch of guys with laser focus who are just, they want to play ball. And you can fall for the coach speak sometimes, but in talking to literally every one of these players over the last 4 or 5 months, they're very quiet. They're a very quiet group. And, there's no boisterous, loud, obnoxious, no anything. They're really quiet. They're really focused. And now it's turned into one of those things that if Tice Westland speaks, you listen. If Evan Hiller speaks, you listen. And I'm really catching that vibe from him early on.
Last weekend, Caden Anderson, the quarterback, obviously it sounds like he was hospitalized. It sounds like he'll be in this game. Can you kind of walk us through kind of that situation and what his health is coming into this game?
Yeah, I wouldn't say he did go to the hospital, but I wouldn't say he was hospitalized.
Gotcha.
He went in for testing. He got hammered, absolutely hammered. I mean, I'm sitting there getting ready to write my column about, wow, they're getting the ball to their playmakers, and this is exactly what it's supposed to look like, and this is how you dispatch an FCS team, unlike Idaho last year, for instance. And then he gets absolutely rocked in War Memorial Stadium, and 25,000 plus are dead silent as he's laying there on the ground just hating life, and you're like, oh boy, that didn't look good at all. Corner blitz, completely untouched. He didn't see it coming at all. So, obviously that was the concern after the game, and like, oh boy, going into Utah with a backup quarterback here, yikes. And I saw Caden walking through the parking lot at War Memorial on Monday and said, man, it's good to see you, walking and breathing. He got rocked. And he said, yeah, the guy got me pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. And, he's good. He's good to go. Some bruising, I guess, in the upper part of his body. So it could have been a lot worse, man. It had collarbone ribs written all over it. And then, he actually slammed into one of his own linemen on the hit. And it's probably a good thing because that also had concussion written all over it if he didn't. So, he's back, man. He's a warrior. He was Quinn Ewer's backup at South Lake Carroll High School in the Dallas area, obviously a powerhouse program in the Lone Star State. TCU was on him. Oklahoma State was on him, teams like that out of high school. He tore 2 ACLs, tore his right ACL twice, and the phone stopped ringing except for area code 307. So Wyoming stuck with him and let him come here and rehab for an entire year. And, he's so thankful that Wyoming believed in him when his phone stopped ringing. And he's got moxie, man. His first start last year, his first career start was against Devon Dampier in New Mexico last year in Albuquerque. And he went toe-to-toe with Dampier all day long. And I tell you what, Dampier was lights out that day, aside from a couple little mistakes there in the fourth quarter that cost the Lobos that win. He rushed for 207 yards on 12 carries, 3 touchdowns. He threw a touchdown, but a costly pick six and a strip sack there in the fourth cost New Mexico that win. And one of the most impressive things to me that day was Anderson threw a pick six in the red zone in going into New Mexico's end zone. Obviously not ideal, but behind the play, he was face to face with the defensive end, headbutting him and getting into it and getting rowdy and got a 15-yard penalty. Obviously, what I'm saying here is not good news for Wyoming at all in any way, but it really showed his moxie and showed what kind of cat he is. And, man, his teammates rally around him hard when you see your quarterback going at it with the defensive end. He's just that kind of cat. He's really laid back, really cool, really like just a cool dude. But, man, when he gets between the lines, he's a competitor and he's fun to watch. And Cowboys are lucky to have him.
Obviously, with Jason Beck and Devon Dampier, Ryan Davis, Nakari Rogers coming from New Mexico, having experience playing against Wyoming last year, what has been the conversation about being able to scheme against this offense, knowing that it is essentially basically a replication of what you saw with New Mexico last year?
A replication with way better weapons and two All-American tackles that I'm writing about as we speak. That's the thought, right? When we saw Dampier was going to Utah, I thought, oh boy, now that freak is going to have protection. And, New Mexico only gave up 5 sacks last year, which led the nation. New Mexico's offensive line wasn't Utah's. So as you can imagine, Dampier was very slippery and got out of a lot of situations last year for the Lobos. So, the thought of that guy with weapons is terrifying. Jay Savell told me at Mountain West Media Days in Las Vegas, damn it, I thought we were done with this guy. You guys landed an absolute gem in that kid. He's a good kid for one. He can throw it. He can run it. I don't even think you guys have seen him scratch the surface yet of what he's really capable of doing. In 2023, they played in Laramie, and New Mexico was trailing 22-9, and all of a sudden they trot in this backup. And next thing you know, he's running all over the field, throwing touchdown passes, completely elusive. Nobody can bring the guy down. And you're thinking to yourself, why the hell haven't they started this kid all along? Like, he's really good. And so Wyoming's already dealt with him twice. They're fortunate to be 2-0 in those meetings. Wayshawn Park shut him down. But now you think Parker's got a better line to run behind. Dampier's got a better line to operate behind. And they have way better weapons on the outside. And Utah's kind of turned into a little bit of a tight end U kind of join as well. So they've got dudes everywhere, and it's no surprise to us. I watched that UCLA game and wasn't shocked one bit to see that Devon Dampier is more comfortable than ever.
What would you say is Dampier's greatest strength from an outside perspective?
Extending, creating, just a freak. That day in the press box in Albuquerque was just your jaw was on the floor the whole game. And not to mention Eli Sanders, the running back for New Mexico, ran for 200 plus as well. And you're just like, wow, that was a 1-win Wyoming team at that time. And you thought, holy cow. But, Caden Anderson in the offense kept answering and answering and answering. I believe it was 35-35 at halftime. I mean, it was a hell of an entertaining game, but if you're a defensive coach, you were puking in your soup. It was brutal. But I think Devon, where his next progression is getting the ball downfield with consistency. He threw a really bad pick six in that game to Wyoming's nickelback, who returned it for a touchdown. And in my opinion, I don't even know why New Mexico was throwing the ball at that point. They certainly didn't need to. But I just think under Kyle Whittingham and the structure of that program and the continuity of that program, like, it's all going to benefit that kid. He's going to be really good. And Jay Sawvell said he doesn't see any weaknesses with this team, and he wouldn't be surprised at all to see them in the Big 12 championship and even the college football playoff. And I've watched a lot of tape this week too. I've watched a lot of tape over the summer in general. He's not wrong at all. This has the makings of a really, really, really good Utah team. And I would argue one of the better teams that we've ever seen at War Memorial Stadium. And that might not shock Utah fans because they probably think, oh, well, who's played at War Memorial Stadium? Texas A&M, Nebraska, Virginia, Ole Miss, Texas Tech, Missouri. Wyoming's done a great job. Tom Urban's done a great job of getting big programs to come play in Laramie, including BYU last year.
Obviously, like a chance at a win, they're 25-point dog at their home stadium. That's a tough situation, but I know, anybody that's come into Laramie understands that how difficult of a challenge that is. From your perspective, where do you see Wyoming have the advantage? Like, where do they need to exploit to make it really difficult on Utah?
I don't know on paper if they have any advantages. I really don't. And that's just being honest. I don't know that they do. I think it's so early in the season. I think it's so far through 2 games, you could maybe say they have an advantage at linebacker and stuff like that, but they haven't faced a Devon Dampier yet. So I think, you're going to get the typical answer from me. They need Utah to make some mistakes, which Utah doesn't do, and they need to capitalize on mistakes. And the Cowboys beat Texas Tech in Laramie 2 years ago. They beat Missouri and Laramie in 2019. They went down 17-0 against Texas Tech. They went down 14-0 against Missouri. They came back and win both those games. You can't do that against Utah. I guarantee you Joey McGuire is in Lubbock still. Anytime Wyoming's brought up, he's like, damn it, we should have ran the ball. They ended up with the number 1 running back in the country that year too, and they just decided to keep it in the air and keep doing their thing. And next thing you know, they get picked off and Wyoming turns the tide in that one. So Kyle Whittingham won't do that. He'll pound them. He'll grind you into dust. So the Cowboys can't afford to get behind, and they have to force some mistakes. They have to. And I think the pass rush is way better. The defensive tackles are a huge strength, even though they lost 2 guys to Achilles injuries right before the season started. But the safety blitzes have been on point so far. The young secondaries played really well so far. Just you need to contain. And the probably the most impressive stat I've seen so far from this defense, 11 missed tackles through 2 weeks. 10's kind of the magic number that you don't want to go over. 9 against Akron in the opener on the road, 2 last week. So they're tackling really well, and that's what they got to do. They've talked about building a fence around Devon Dampier. Easier said than done, of course. I don't know if there's going to be a spy situation or anything like that, but even if there is, he beats 1 spy and he's gone. So it's an uphill climb, but there's 25,000 rowdy-ass people in the crowd. It's going to be a sold-out atmosphere. Crazy things happen in Laramie at night. They have that going for them. They need to get momentum, and they need to take it into the fourth quarter and see if they can duke it out for 15 minutes.
Before I get you out on this, there's going to be a lot of fans traveling up to Laramie. Where's the spot that they should go?
Well, Laramie's your prototypical college town. It's like Logan with bars. It's fantastic. There's just awesome bars and restaurants, locally owned stuff. Basically park downtown. You're going to run into great pizza at Crowbar, peanut butter and jelly smoked wings at Born in a Barn, and then the library, which has been so good to 7220 Sports. great place. And Bill's Mafia, the guy who dresses like Elvis in the end zone at Bill's games, him and a bunch of his buddies, they come from Western New York every year for one Wyoming game. And they will be in the crowd. They'll be in Tailgate Alley and stuff for this one. Bunch of guys coming from Buffalo. And then on Sunday, after they party all day and have fun at the Wyoming game, then on Sunday they all go to the library and watch the Bills game and get rowdy, and the whole place is shut down for Bills and Wyoming fans to watch Josh Allen. So it's going to be a fun atmosphere. It's completely sold out. It's going to be packed and rowdy. It's a 6:00 start, so people are going to be tuned up, and it's going to be good, man. I'm excited to see the atmosphere, and it always makes me jealous. Games like this and BYU last year, I'm like, man, I should be sitting right there. I should have a blood alcohol content and I should be sitting right there. But excited to see it play out.
That's awesome, man. Well, Cody, I appreciate your time. Let everybody know where they can find your work and kind of what you're up to right now.
Yeah, 7220sports.com, hammering down on the Utah. I got a great story. I think Utah fans would enjoy. I got a great story that I did in 2019 about with Ron McBride. I saw him on the sideline at Rice Eccles when I was there for that. What was that football league, AAF or whatever, that was alive for like 8 games?
Yep, the Stallions.
Yeah, I went to a Stallions game because they had a couple of Cowboys, and Dennis Erickson was their coach, and he coached in Wyoming. So I went and did some stories, and I saw Ron McBride, and I was like, I got to talk to Ron McBride. And then obviously Jay Sawvell at Media Days talking about Devon Dampier and Bronco Mendenhall talking about Dampier. And I'm writing about these incredible offensive tackles right now as we speak. So have a podcast too. We talked a lot about, is this a rivalry, and our memories. I had a couple of old school Wyoming fans on with me talking about the rivalry and the old school meetings with Utah and kind of our memories, and really diving into this game as always, diving into every game, but diving into this game head first because of the history and because of how much fun this meeting was until Urban Meyer showed up and Kyle Whittingham took the reins. Wyoming's only won once since that happened, so it hasn't been very fun of late over here, but that could change in a hurry on Saturday night.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate that. Thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you up there in Laramie and seeing how this game has played out.
Yeah, safe travels, man. Hope you have a great time.
Thank you. All right, that was Cody Tucker. Really grateful to have him on here. Obviously knows a ton about Wyoming, coming as a fan and then now doing it as a media member. It's great to get that perspective because you have somebody that cares. And, I think a lot of people look at Wyoming as a place that is obviously they care a ton about the sport, but not many people think about Wyoming until you have to get up there, right, and see the challenge that it brings. So I'm really fascinated by this game. I'm excited to get up to War Memorial Stadium, see what it's like, see how raucous that crowd is, see if Utah and Wyoming fans can all unify in their hatred of BYU, I guess. We'll see what happens. But, this is an intriguing matchup simply because Wyoming has experienced this Utah offense before. As he mentioned, obviously with different skill sets or players that would have a lot more talent on paper. But, maybe there's some lessons that were learned from the last time to be able to help them moving forward. And if they're able to do that, if they can match what Jason Beck is able to scheme up, that becomes a challenge for Utah. And if Utah's not able to be in their top form going into this game, I think you could see a lot of trouble. But as is mentioned, Utah has the advantage in pretty much every single position here. Trench play is going to be huge here, where Utah has a distinct advantage. And if they're able to establish their identity and do what they need to, you have to like Utah. Whether they cover the 25-point spread, that remains to be seen. I don't think it really matters. If you're Utah, you want to get out of that game healthy. You want to be able to look like you cared and not just kind of rolling through the motions, and being able to come away with a win as you prepare yourself next for Texas Tech. But if this is one of those games where Utah is preparing for Texas Tech before they're playing for Wyoming, this could be a really difficult weekend. I've said on the radio a bunch this week that I don't get that sense from this Utah team. I think they're dialed in. I think the fact that you have guys from New Mexico's team last year where they got beat and they understand what this Wyoming team can be, that's going to have their attention, right? And if you've got Devon Dampier who's played against them and he's got a little bit of an axe to grind in that game, you're going to see a Utah team that's tuned up and ready to go. So I don't get the same sense that this is going to be like a Cal Poly where you start out a little slow and it kind of going through the motions a little bit. I get the sense that you're going into this game in Laramie ready to go, right? And this Utah team really wants to establish who it is, and so we'll see what happens. Utah still, this will be the last week where we don't get an injury report, but Kyle Whittingham said on Tuesday that they feel pretty good about where they're at. There's a bunch of guys that were practicing with the team that have been held out or have been banged up, and so it seems like Utah will come into this game relatively healthy. Whether they're going to hold guys out or whether they're going to have a situation where they kind of move things in and have a snap count for some of them to prepare for conference play remains to be seen. But I think Utah's done a good job of kind of flexing its muscle in a lot of different areas where they can show some depth, where they can show where they can kind of test and figure out what they need to do. So, you have to like Utah in this game simply because of what they've put on paper, but you can't just roll into War Memorial Stadium and expect to win. So really fascinated by this game. I think this will be a lot of fun. If you're traveling up to Wyoming, safe travels. I'm going to be right there with you. It's a long drive, depending on some people. Some people think it's a short drive, but it's a longer drive for others. And look, this can be a fun opportunity. I think this will be a great chance for Utah to face some early adversity. What's that crowd going to be like, especially when they're screaming at you, and especially if they can get you to stop, in some of the things that you've been effective in. We're going to have some fun and kind of see what this looks like. So looking forward to this game. This is the last game of the non-conference schedule, and then it all turns to conference schedules. And, that's where it really gets serious for this Utah team. Not that this isn't a serious situation. You want to win every single game. But once conference play starts, that's where everything becomes serious, and Utah's going to try for that Big 12 title. So, this is a great I wouldn't even call it a tune-up opportunity because Wyoming is much more respectable than that. But I think it's a great opportunity for Utah to face an adverse situation before coming back to home to face arguably one of the tougher teams in the Big 12 right now, who are going to have a ton of skills players and present a challenge for Utah that way. So appreciate you joining in again for another episode. I'm happy to chat with you guys anytime. If you have any questions, put anything on this podcast to help you guys understand different things about the games and get those perspectives. But I appreciate you listening. We'll sign out for the weekend, and enjoy the weekend of football, and be safe if you're traveling.